Hi, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars looking at the relationship between the sales function and the finance function within an organization. This webinar is going to be focused on commerciality, business by design, rather than functional silos, and touching on some issues around governance as well. But before we do that, I'd really like to introduce our panelists today in alphabetical order, starting off with Andy Nellis from Cognition 24. Good afternoon, Andy.
Hi there.
Second, Raymond Holt. Good afternoon, Raymond.
Hi, Andy.
Raymond is the founder at Agnentis Partners and has been a CFO at more organisations than we can shake a stick at. And last but by no means least, Stuart Monk. Stuart is the VP and General Manager for EMEA at FinancialForce. Good afternoon, Stuart.
Hi, Andy.
Great, thank you all for joining us today. So I'd like to start off, Raymond, talking with yourself. Previously, we talked about the relationship between sales and finance. What are some of the business challenges that you see today, and which will require finance and sales coming closer to that, especially thinking as we are about what's going on with COVID at the moment?
Yeah, I think two of the bigger issues I think will be around cash and margin and pressures on margin. So I think we're gonna, if ever the old adage of turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king is ever going to be true, it's going to be now. And I think how we set ourselves up to actually focus on the elements that are important, the margins and the cash, I think they're, for me, from a finance perspective and a core data and numbers perspective, they're the two bits that for me are the most critical.
Yeah, Stuart, what sort of business challenges are you seeing?
Well, COVID is a perfect example of the need for dynamic operating models, right? There is so much that is out of control of organizations. You've got COVID, I mean, in the UK, we've got the Brexit position, for example, and on top of that, you are constantly challenged as a business by disruption from competitors, largely led by innovation on there. So the organizations that are able to weather these are really the ones that can pivot and be flexible. And really for that, you need to be working with both dynamic systems and dynamic operating models, i.e. your talent there.
I love that ability to pivot, giving you agility within the business to respond to what those pressures might be. Andy, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think I'd echo both Stuart and Raymond's points. I think going back to maybe what we said before, being joined up right now is absolutely crucial. So as an organisation, the sales and finance functions must really be working together. Going back to the whole kind of margin and cash flow as a managing director, those are the things that I'm really interested in, literally day to day at the moment. That joined up approach is absolutely crucial right now.
Yeah, and where your focus may have been more longer term at the moment, it's really a case of keeping the ship afloat and to continue moving forward. Okay. So Stuart, what kind of business model would you like to see being built to address some of the challenges that we've just been alluding to?
I think it's the same for all of us, right? If you're not focused on your customer, you're not in business on there. So when we think about that design, it's just challenging you to react to or be ahead of your customer's perception of value. So let me give you an example of that within our own business. Traditionally, we're providing software, but we're now doing that as a service. And our perception of value from customers has changed. It would typically be from the moment you go live on a solution. Customers are now demanding or reacting to more of a view of utilization, i.e. who is actually using solutions. Now, do we pivot that in terms of the way in which we bill on there? Do we create different structures in terms of how we align the perception of value to the way in which people pay for that? So I think that's the big reward, right? Getting systems aligned through in your finance and sales functions aligned to your customer's perception of value.
Yeah, Raymond, I can see you nodding there. That's a shared perspective, I would have thought.
Yeah, it is, and also I think one of the things which I'd like to see in the models moving forwards is, I think there's a need for a greater understanding of where your resources have gone in the past and where you really want them to go in the future. So there's a cost of sale on so building it from a client's perspective, and then understanding the cost of delivery, or if there is fundamental say resource going into client or anything or something like that, understanding clearly. I used to use this in the motor industry. There's a profitability associated with a client. It's understanding where that profitability goes and how much you retain. And then by understanding where your money's going, being able to influence where that goes and to keep more for yourself and actually make sure the value's in there. I'm not sure, it'd be great for commercial models to actually be able to give that flexibility, to be able to see that transparently, so you can actually influence the decisions that you make and how you support that client most profitably with the most value that you can give.
Yeah, you see that to be a key gap at the moment, do you?
I do, yeah. It's cost of sale, for example, so I've worked in professional services, I've worked in product orientated or in industries as well. And I think when you have a product, cost of sale is far more, it's in your face, it's there, isn't it? It's tangible.
Yeah.
Professional services environment, maybe not quite so much, and therefore not always understanding where the margin is coming truly from, or at one level understanding at a gross level, where it's come from, but then never really quite understanding where it goes from there. And I think it's important that from pound one all the way to pound 100, you understand where your money is going, so you can influence it and put it where you want it, especially when there's not going to be a great deal of resource around for investment, possibly in the short term. I think you do need to know where your money's going so you can actually change its direction.
Yeah. So staying with you, Raymond, what are the key elements of what that model might look like then?
Well, there needs to be a really robust customer profitability model, and I think that's something which not necessarily is commonplace. I think also then what you need to understand is it really does need to be a real breakdown, but also then who inputs into in creating that profitability for that client, and I think as Stuart said, where your revenue is coming from, so you can actually influence where your revenue should be coming from in the future. So whether you should be capitalizing on or charging for certain things that you haven't been charging for in the past, or just something that's a bit more, it has a great deal more fluidity built around common factors of margin and cash from a finance perspective of margin and cash.
Yeah. Andy, you're MD of a professional services organization. Do you share those pains and those thoughts on what the answers look like?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think so. Just going back to even some of the practicalities of, as Stuart said, putting the customer at the heart of everything we do. So from if we're trying to sell more services to that customer, as a sales function, you need to really understand what might be some issues going on in terms of delivery right now, or really equally to understand whether those customers are bad payers or a credit risk, or whatever it might be. So I think those are the things that we should be thinking about in terms of what the model looks like going forward. Again, coming back to a single source of truth, the ability for everyone to access the data in the way they need to in order to give those kind of insights.
Yeah, we've touched previously around the use of evidence and data across the organization, business centric. It's a great point. Stuart, what we touched on this issue around agility and all that sort of stuff, and I wonder what role the cloud plays in some of this, and how that model is different from the traditional legacy approach to software deployments.
Yeah, so a couple of components. So agility means a couple of things in the cloud world, right? You shouldn't have to worry about technology innovation because your cloud vendors should be delivering that as a matter of the service. So for example, in FinancialForce's world, we deliver 2 releases a year that encompasses underlying technology, so our customers don't have to go out and spend money on AI, etc. Within there. The other advantage it should bring is for you to stop being special. You don't have now.
I like being special.
You don't, in the sense that we, as a cloud vendor, we should bring a best practice to you. Yeah, you should not spend time requirements gathering and replicating what you have into the cloud. The question you should be asking yourself is, what is the delta between the best practice that this solution is bringing me and the way in which I operate, and can I adopt to that? Because then you can take advantage of the continual innovation within there and the flexibility. And then another example of that is a lot of customers now are looking at moving from product centric to more of a subscription service. Does your solution provide for that kind of flexibility in terms of the way you're billing, etc., and replicate your business models? So those would be, from a technology perspective, the models to support.
Yeah, some interesting points there. We're almost touching on issues around change. So Raymond, I could see you agreeing there. What kind of skills might we be looking for to support this and implement these new ways of working?
So what you're going to have, like what Stuart said about having that your cloud provider providing that quality feedback all the time, that innovation, that so you don't have to think about it. Sales teams are going to be out in the field all the time, and information is going to be coming back from them about what pricing is working, what pricing isn't working, what products are working, what products aren't working. And the technology is going to have to be flexible and adaptable enough to provide that information back effectively into the sales teams almost on a real-time basis. So because the COVID has shown that decision making is quick now, and I expect that to be the case moving forward as well.
Yeah. Andy, we're talking about agility and around speed, and that requires different ways of working, different ways of thinking. What are you seeing on the ground when you're doing implementations around the skills that people may lack and those that are really sort of advantageous?
Yeah, I think going back to the points that both Stuart and Raymond have made in terms of innovation, 2 releases a year, it's a real opportunity for an organisation to embrace that. I think some of the things we've seen in the past certainly are trying to go from a more of an on-premise type approach to adopting cloud solutions and the innovation those bring. Organisations sometimes don't really understand the transition that requires, and if you're going to get the best out of the investment that every cloud solution provider is giving into that innovation, then you really need to start to think about how you're going to adopt that software and how you're going to continue to utilize it and get the best out of it as you go forward. So really taking you along that maturity curve, and getting the best of the benefits continuously rather than at certain points in time along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So Stuart, that means people like CFOs and sales managers, they need to have a better understanding of what technology can do, surely.
Well, I think it's the understanding, but that comes with the skill set of change management. I mean, I think any implementation, no matter where we are, you're trying to bring about change. You're looking at a story of 3/3. You got a third of your people that'll completely embrace it, want to come forward, probably a third that'll sit on the fence, and a third that won't. On there, so you always, I think the skill set or the pivot here again is this move into the ability to expand our skill set into change management to cope with that change agenda.
Yeah, interesting. So there's a different world. We need to be more agile. We need to be more flexible. Data's at the heart of it. And these new models require some degree of agility, not just in the business, but in the way in which we think, and potentially some new skills to support that.
Yeah, then you're getting into more of the emotional intelligence in terms of running your businesses, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And at the moment, of course, this issue around empathy, the way in which we're engaging with our customers. So what about the final piece then, thinking about the technology that can support this this new ways of working in this new, greater, more flexible, more agile model? Raymond, what are the key components of technology do you think can help drive this through?
Well, I think whilst in finance there's a degree of compliance, and I think the technology needs to, obviously the technology needs to be able to provide that compliance. I think what I'd also like to see the technology be able to do is also provide that governance, which is actually be able to illustrate the why we're doing the decisions that we're making. And I think this goes back to Stuart's point about the change management. And then you talk about different skills and the mindset that needs to change as well. I'd like the technology needs to be able to be reflective and provide the information in the why we're making, what decisions we're trying to make, rather than historically just almost saying yes and no to decisions. I think it has to provide a little bit more colour to enable sort of better decisions to be made in that respect.
Yeah, it can apply some. This is where areas like AI and things like that come in, I suppose. Andy, your thoughts on technology?
Again, I'll keep coming back to single source of truth. I'll come back to if we're going to work as one organisation. So we talk about back office, front office. We talk about one office. Well, let's talk about one organisation, and let's empower people to do their jobs and give them the information they need to allow them to do that.
Yeah, I love that idea of one office rather than a front office and a back office, just bring everything together. Stuart, last words to you. Working in the technology space, what do you think are the big opportunities that can help shape this model moving forward?
Yeah, so if I take a customer-centric view of my customer, traditionally we were selling technology to the IT organization, right? And now in terms of software as a service, 70% of the buying decisions are with the business. There's been a shift there. So, and we estimate between 9 and 16 different personas across that buying cycle. So you're seeing the rise in a lot of collaboration technology, in order to make that. And I noticed during COVID, both Google and Microsoft are upping the amount of advertising around some of those collaboration tools in there. So I think you've got an opportunity for a more joined up enterprise on there. And then the other thing is, I will go back to automation. There is no reason in the world right now for finance functions to be doing batch processing on a either a monthly close or an annual close. We can provide real-time close. You can get real-time analytics across there. From a productivity perspective, the ability expenses wise for my people to take a photograph of a receipt, and that's the last thing they do because it interprets that using IoT and machine learning. That's a huge bounce in productivity. And the other thing I would say is that, because I champion diversity inclusion, is that technology actually opens up for people. So for example, the ability to use enterprise applications through voice control, it broadens the pool of talent that you can bring in. Home working. So within technology, we do a pretty awful job. Only 13% of female graduates would consider a STEM career. Well, maybe the flexibility, and maybe the proof point through COVID is that you still can get work done in the home, and that brings on board maybe people that wouldn't normally be in the workforce as well. So I think there's lots of good points technology can support that changing role of finance.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's a really interesting use cases that we knew were bubbling along, but perhaps the current crisis has brought those opportunities much more to the fore. Fascinating. Unfortunately, I've got to bring this webinar to the end at this point. But thank you very much indeed to Stuart, Raymond and Andy for their invaluable contributions today. So where are we in terms of what a model moving forward might look like? It's got to be customer centric, it's got to be business centric, it's got to be flexible, it's got to be agile, it's got to be collaborative, it's got to enable technologies like home working and embracing things like AI, and that, as Stuart touched on, some fantastic opportunities for our organizations to be different moving forward. So thank you very much indeed to everybody involved today. We have got together a short ebook which is available for you to download that touches on some of these issues. And the last webinar in the series, which is looking at the future of the CFO, will be coming shortly. So until then, thank you very much indeed for your time. I look forward to seeing you again.